Hello and welcome to Correro. My name is Godwin Sunday. Education reform remains one of Nigerians' most urgent national priorities. But for decades, urgent national priorities and also the battles of chronic underfunding, outdated curriculum, poor infrastructure, teachers shortages, and also the disconnect between academic training and labor market needs have also become very pertinent to look at in our educational sector. But for the part of government and policymakers, well, the government have launched multiple initiatives and policies, frameworks aimed at reforms, yet learning outcomes, literacy rates, and global competitiveness remain below expectations. As Nigeria pushes forward with a new education policy, another development has captured national attention, a controversy involving former Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Engineer Farouk Ahmed. Prominent businessman Aliko Dangote recently petitioned the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, alleging that Ahmed spent millions of dollars on Switzerland claims tied to questions about wealth, public service accountability, and ethical standards. Well, Dangote petition detailed that approximately $5 million was spent on secondary education for 4 children in Swiss schools and an additional sum on tertiary education, including a 2025 MBA program abroad. The petition argues that such expenditure by public official raises concern about conflict of interest, misuse of authority, and the need for transparency, especially in a country where many struggle to afford basic schooling needs and costs. Well, Engineer Ahmed has rejected the allegations as misleading and ill-timed, saying that scholarships, family savings, and trust funds are primarily finance the education of his children, and inviting proper scrutiny of his financial records, as certain that nothing was derived from public coffers. Interesting as that sounds, this debate sparked a broader question that Nigerians must confront if leadership at the highest level becomes intertwined with public distrust. What does that mean for confidence in public education reforms, funding, and also accountability? Education policy is not only about budget and curricula, it's also about trust, integrity, and the belief that public institutions with will serve all citizens fairly. Well, tonight on Correro, we will examine the drive behind Nigeria's education reforms, what progress has been made, what gaps remain, and how accountability, transparency, and citizens' trust must be woven into the very fabric of these reforms. Joining us to unpack this conversation is Chukwuemeka Godswill, the founder and CEO of BoldScholar Research, whose expertise on education strategy and policy evaluation will help us assess the real impact of reforms and the road ahead. At this point, we'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll dive into the conversation. Please stay with us. Well, you're welcome back. With me in the studio right now is Chukwuemeka Godswill, founder and CEO of BoldScholar Research. You're welcome to Correro.
Thank you.
All right. Chukwuemeka, let's even begin the conversation by first looking at the generality of Nigerian education and the reforms proposed by the government, and also some of this reform have already been implemented, talking about the net fund, the TVET, and other reforms being initiated and implemented by this administration. But generally, looking at the various geopolitical zones of Nigeria, how will you assess our educational progress from the state, the local government, and the federal government programs and initiative? How effective has this been so far in accelerating us from where we are to where we ought to be as a nation, educational-wise?
All right, thank you, viewers. Well, the Nigerian education sector has really made quite some progress, very good progress. This present administration has really taken up the game, by increasing the budget for education. Very strong. And this increment is yet to be seen. Some would say just like most reforms that have been implemented by the present administration. But we see a departure from the low budget in the education to a very high, percentage at the moment. Then there are a few reforms which the present minister has really put into place. There's a strong call for digitization, inclusion of digitization into the education sector. And there is also the NEL fund, which Mr. President has really put in place to help the indigent students to go to school. It's a good thing if the reform, especially the NEL fund, is not marred by corruption. We already hear certain information from some quarters how the fund is being siphoned. There's been accusations and counter-accusations to the chief executives of different tertiary institutions. But we pray that the NEL fund, for instance, is properly implemented. If implemented properly, is going to really boost the number of persons that will be eager to finish their education, because it's not just starting the education. There are a good number of persons that started their education and dropped out. Most of them dropped out of lack of fund to continue. But we know with what Mr. President has put in place, there's going to be a kind of booster for the education sector, if it is not marred, by corruption. Then the digitization reform is very good, but then there's of course strong proliferation of internet in the nation at the moment. But then there has to be good infrastructure to booster that, because if the teachers do not understand how to utilize something as simple as smartboard, so it will be useless placing a smartboard in any classroom. I heard that the administration has started getting some smartboards for some classrooms. Yes, it's a good thing. At least the infrastructure is being addressed, which is the internet, the smartboards. Smartboards would enable the teacher to simply easily connect to the internet and teach. This is a digital age. But then there has to be a good proper training of the teachers. Most of these teachers are quite analog. It is so terrible that a good number of them still teach with the notes they made while in school, especially in the tertiary institution. Some teachers, the older ones, still teach with that. Most of them are too lazy to upscale. When you call for paper, for instance, for them to submit their journals, they simply pick a student's research, touch it a little and submit. And now that the ChatGPT has come up with a good number of things, the AI with the ChatGPT and other AI solutions, the students also churn out some things that are not too wonderful. Imagine a teacher picking a project that a student used AI to write and submits it. So that's a terrible thing. So teachers need to be trained to know how to use some of the things that the administration is churning out, so that the implementation of those policies would really get to where it is meant to get to.
All right. Chukwuemeka, let's talk about Nigerian educational system in general. The policies and its generality.
Okay.
There tend to be a disconnect between the economic reality of Nigeria and what is being taught, even in our various institutions of learning. These reforms, are they addressing these lacunas, these gaps that we've had over time, even to address certain economic needs, where you go to school to study certain things that are not relevant in addressing certain economic policies in Nigeria? Are we there yet?
No, we're not there yet. We're not there yet, but I think we're making some progress. Yes, we are making some progress, but we're not there yet. You know, every policy, any policy that has to do with education has to be, you know, student-centered, okay, and data-driven. You understand? So if it is not student-centered, it is going to be useless as far as education reform, you know, policy is concerned. It has to be student-centered. And like I mentioned earlier, the NEL fund policy is student-centered. It's wonderful if implemented properly without corruption. You know, that's the problem we have. Then, you know, the other part that I think the education ministry has to look into is the curriculum. Our curriculum is terrible. You know, it is meant to make the student to graduate and look for a job. It is meant to make the student to, when he graduates, he start looking for who is going to, you know, employ him. But if we can come up with a model, you know, it doesn't have to be necessarily what the white man left for us. We have our own minds to build something that suits us, something that is tailored, you know, for us. And we are humans. We have brain, just like the white man that gave us their own curriculum. We can restructure our curriculum to suit the people. And the kind of curriculum I would personally want to see going forward is such that would enable the students to be, you know, self-employed. Even while the student is still there, he should start thinking of coming up with ideas of things to do. Google was produced, or rather developed, by students while they were still in school. It's part of their thesis. And they went ahead to implement it. We want to see a situation where a student writes a project, and the project he writes is one of the things he wants to do when he graduates, something he wants to implement when he graduates from the school. And he sits before a board and he's telling them about this project and how it's going to affect the humans, how it's going to move the nation forward, you know, and how it's going to implement it line by line, and then the solution, the things it's going to do, and how this will help the nation grow. That's the kind of project, because a project is meant to have a problem, one, then there has to be a solution, a guideline on how this solution will be implemented. There has to be a touch on something similar in the past, which could be like what we call statement problem. You know, where you now say, okay, based on what Mr. A has done in the past, and based on what Mr. B has done in the past, he has touched this line, he has touched this line, I have this to present. And when I finish, I'm going to implement this, and this is how I'm going to go about it. I want to see a project, you know, presented, or a thesis presented by a student, and as he is coming out, investors want to invest in that project to do. That is, when we get to that level, that is when our education is fruitful. At the moment, we're simply churning out students that want to graduate and look for a job. And it is not good for the nation. So the kind of things I want to see, until we get there, we haven't started teaching.
All right. Yeah. So for a lot of young persons right now, the narrative that they push and drive is that education is a scam. Largely because of the fact that our education online has been tilted towards the upper class and the lower class. You are in the research field. How correct is the assertion that the educational space in Nigeria is further widening the gap between the rich and the poor instead of mitigating this divide?
Well, yeah, it still falls back to the curriculum problem. You know, if we can get the curriculum right, we're going to, you know, shrink the divide, you know, between the poor and the rich.
So for now, the divide is broad.
It's very broad, you know, and it's because, you know, there's in the southeast, there's the kind of education we have. You know, not the classroom education. Talking about the business education.
Yeah.
It's a vocational kind of
the informal
education.
What we call informal education.
Good. So,
yeah.
but it is actually vocational. You know, the one boy style, the boy, you know, kind of education where someone has to hand over, you know, a child for mentorship to an elderly person or someone who already has gone ahead in the business. So that kind of education, you know, is something that if we can bring into the classroom, it's going to help. We brought it in to some extent, you know, where we have like the IT stage where somebody gets to some extent, he goes for IT, you know, but there's no proper monitoring of those IT. There has to be a proper monitoring of the students when they are running their IT, to be sure that they are running the IT in the right place, because it is not just sending them on IT. So that stage is that mentorship stage that we have to bring in, and we have to find a way to inculcate this into every sphere of education. At the moment, it's basically in the science part, but why not bring it into the humanities? Yeah. Why not? So when you, and I know why, you know, it's possible that they don't think that it is important in the humanities because, or in the arts, because they feel it's just theory. So let the guy go and learn how to read some books and come out. To what end is that? That's the question. So when you set up a discipline, for instance, maybe Department of Education, Department of English, Department of History. You know, the education is even doing well because they still send them on IT for mentorship. Department of History, Department of Political Science. When you set up such departments and admit students, the people that set up and have such discipline should ask themselves, to what end is this? Why are we admitting students into this department? What do we expect them to be? When our teachers, when our educationists, when the HODs and deans of faculties, when the VCs, provosts and rectors begin to think in this direction, why do we have to have people in this discipline? To what end? But most of them don't think about this. So what they know is, oh, let's do accreditation so that they will have the right to admit students, and then we graduate them. We have teachers. We employ teachers to teach these courses, and then they graduate. Every course that is brought into any discipline, the first question the people that are, you know, come up with such course should ask is, to what end? By the time we start thinking of this, the gap will shrink. Because when you sit back and analyze and ask yourself that question, you will now ask yourself, is it even relevant? Or by the time you think about it, you can even ask yourself, okay, what do we bring in so that these guys, when they graduate, they will be relevant in the society, not just theory. So we have to bring in the vocational aspect of learning into every aspect, every field of discipline. Until we do that, the system will keep churning out people that come out and they are useless to the society. And by the time they become frustrated, they go back to do masters. By the time they finish masters, no lectures, no work, they go back to do PhD. And then you get to the PhD, then you sit back. Because the classrooms are filled up with teachers that are even looking for courses to teach. So by the time all of us finish first degree, do masters, do PhD, and then there's no job. That is when the guy begins to think of how to carry laptop and start doing Yahoo. But the same laptop can be used to a very good end.
Interested. There is a current controversy. It has to do with Engineer Farouk Ahmed, who is the former chief executive officer of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. And that controversy centers around the fact that his children are schooling abroad, schooling outside the shores of Nigeria. Now, he is not just the only person that is caught in this web. A lot of elites in Nigeria tend to also send their children abroad to study. But in reality, what does this say about the Nigerian educational system? Can we trust the Nigerian educational system to be able to bring about the desired change and progress that every nation desires?
Okay, first of all, I want to use this opportunity to thank Dangote. You know, I'm not thanking him because of what he revealed about Farouk.
As a whistleblower.
Yeah, so, but I want to thank him for his pledge, you know, to pump in $700 million into the education sector to support education for the next 10 years. It is very commendable. It shows a man who has trust in the people and the education. All right? So, but then, for Engineer Farouk, taking your children abroad to pay such whooping sum of $5 million.
Allegedly.
Well, allegedly. But $5 million, if we check it today, should be clocking about 7 billion. I hope you know. That's whooping. For 4 kids. That amount is enough to build schools in the entire state, not just in his local government alone. Now that shows a man who has no trust in the system. And the same applies to our politicians. Our politicians, look at them. Every one of them has their kids abroad. You know, when they finish, they send them abroad. All of them, every now and then, we see them celebrating their kids, graduation of their kids. That is lack of trust. And any system you don't trust cannot yield. Okay? So we don't trust our money. The Naira, we want to save it in dollar. We don't trust nothing. That's why the Naira is weakening. There's no trust, lack of trust. There's no trust in the people. We don't want to empower them. You know, we take the money, we ship it abroad to go, you know, we would rather invest abroad than investing in the nation. We don't trust our people. So the problem the education sector has, you know, the issue with Farouk is lack of trust in the system. Because I don't see why somebody that has such amount of money, you know, and if he has trust in the nation, he could have built a school with such money. 7 billion is huge enough to build any standard institution. Bring people from abroad and put his kids in that school and tell them, teach my kids and teach other people around in this nation. That money is enough to do that. 7 billion. That's enough to set up a standard secondary school. That's what
doesn't this demonstrates the failure of Nigerian educational system?
No, it says that. But because the man does not have trust in it, the system has failed because the people lack trust to invest in it. Go to colleges of education, state colleges. The colleges of education are total failure, except the ones that are funded by TED Fund. In fact, if you go to the universities, if you go to tertiary institutions nationwide, both that of states and federal, the major projects you see within those communities, those institutions, are the ones funded by TED Fund. You see everything TED Fund. Now, TED Fund is federal government. Now, you ask yourself, what is the state governor of that state doing? His own kids are abroad studying. The state institution, I'm talking about College of Education and Polytechnics, under his state, not federal, if you go there, you will see decay. Decay of infrastructure, lack of teachers, low salary payment, that the teachers, are so poor. The teachers are so poor that they want to eat off the students. Are you getting it? They don't have time to properly supervise the students. They are always out to eat from them. But that shouldn't be so. So there's lack of trust. The first thing that has killed the education system is lack of trust in the area of our politicians. Any state governor, just go and you can research this. Part of what I do is visiting institutions to set up digital libraries for them. That's part of what I do. When you get there, these people don't have money to pay for a database of 3 million. The libraries are empty. Now, the digital databases, they are meant to subscribe. Do you know when they subscribe? They only subscribe when they hear that the accreditation team is coming. So it is not for the students, it is for the school to remain relevant. And when they subscribe to these databases, they don't even tell the students that such database exists. It is a decay. So there's the problem of Farouk is lack of trust in the system, and it is not peculiar to him. It is a common thing with those in the ruling class in the nation, from those occupying relevant positions to, in outside the politics, like he is not a politician, he's a technocrat, down to the politicians themselves. Because if they trust the system, they will keep their children here and build the system so that their own children will participate in the classroom learning. But because they don't trust the system, they don't trust the teacher teaching, because they have seen how it is. They are underpaid. There's no infrastructure. The buildings are decaying. The hostels, oh my goodness, you need to visit the hostels.
What would join you in one of this research to visit the hostels? But then, in a situation where local government councillors right now don't send their children to public schools, they send them to private institutions. The directors of ministries, agencies, and parastatals would rather look the other way around by sending their children out of the country to learn. Is there hope for the average Nigerian child who is not privileged to also explore some of these alternatives?
Well, I thank God for technology. Thank God for technology. Every child in Nigeria now should go beyond just relying on the classroom lectures to self-training.
As you're talking about children that are residing in urban communities. When we're talking about children that are domiciled in a rural community, when I mean rural community, I mean deep rural communities.
Now
traveling down to Biliri, to Katingo, traveling down to the far north, traveling to even the far part of Cross River State, the interior part of Cross River State, taking it down to Yala, down to Boki, you're going down to Obudu. The places that you get to and your phone is telling you that there is no internet. In such a situation, is there light at the end of the tunnel for the average Nigerian child, knowing fully well that they're going to compete with their counterparts and also across the world?
Well, the situation is distressing, but the truth is, we'll keep hoping. It is difficult. It is difficult. The only thing we can keep doing is to keep talking to the authorities, because not everybody can afford private education, like can afford a private institution, and there's a strong proliferation of private schools, from primary school to secondary to the tertiary. And then, especially in the primary, for primary and secondary, the private institutions seem to be more reliable as it is now. Frankly speaking, the only one where we still have hope on the public institution is in the tertiary. Is in the tertiary. And that's because of the TED Fund. Thank God for TED Fund. You know, that initiative is wonderful. But for the primary school, the only thing any teacher, any parent can do is to simply hope. But you should find a way to also bring in, no matter how little resource you have, some of these teachers in the public schools that are in the rural areas, of course they're not well paid. If you can just save a little, because the parent has to do something personal on his own. There has to be some sacrifice. They're talking about your kids. So if you can find a way and generate, set up, come up with additional 10,000 naira for that teacher that teaches your kid in school, and tell him, please, teacher, can you come and assist my kid at home, you know, from so time to so time. That teacher may want to come and do that.
Is it that bad?
It's that bad. It is. It is. Because what they teach them in classrooms during normal lecture hours are no longer enough. In those days when I was in school, we don't used to have lessons after school. We were not having that. Immediately school, we always look forward to the bell to ring so that everybody goes home. And you still learn and you're smart. Because in those days, teaching was good. But there's a deterioration of the quality of education that is coming out now. Probably because most teachers never wanted to be teachers. Let's say the truth. Most of the teachers we have now are only there because there's no other job to do, to be frank. If you ask them, most of them don't want to remain in class. If they have small opportunity, they disappear. And it's not just those in the primary school and secondary. It goes down to the tertiary institutions. There was a time TED Fund was funding, tertiary institutions, the teachers, lecturers, going abroad for lectures. Most of them, when they go there, they don't want to come back. Then TED Fund stopped that. What? They go there, they jackpot. And not that they jackpot to continue teaching. They jackpot to start doing that because now they have found a different opportunity. In those days, there were teachers that had the opportunity to do something else, but they prefer to teach because they take it as a calling. They have passion for it. So when they teach students, they teach them properly. But these days, we have teachers that never wanted to be in the classroom. It was accidental teacher that suddenly found himself, out of necessity. Not out of necessity, please. Out of, he's looking for something to do. And then there was no other thing. And then he applied for teaching and they employed him. When he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't want to go teaching. So he doesn't prepare properly to teach. So he goes to the class, he just teaches the students anything, waiting for the time to go so he can go home. Are you getting it? So that is why we have the decay, we have the deterioration of the quality of education. So there has to be a time we find a way, the Ministry of Education finds a way to not only train the teachers, but also get someone to talk to them and get that teacher who never wanted to teach to finally accept teaching and do the job of teaching and take joy in it. And part of what the government should do is to raise the salary scheme, the allowance, the take home, so that these people can be a little. The situation has changed. There are days, in those days, after class, the teacher can tell us to go farm for him. We farm for the teacher, and by harvest time, the teacher has enough for his family to eat. These days, there's nothing like that. So the teacher has bills to pay. The teacher has a lot of pressure. So the system has to support him so that he can finally accept to teach and have it as a career and enjoy teaching. And then he can deliver properly to the students in the public, schools. Because the ones in the private actually make sure that watch what the teacher teaches. If he doesn't teach well, they sack him.
All right, all right. Chukwuemeka, let's even talk about these reforms by the government. A lot of people have argued that these sectoral reforms, even initiated by the government, is targeted towards the urban community. But looking at the reforms from the various tiers of government, how will you assess the reforms in general?
Well, most of the ones we've seen so far have just been launched. We haven't seen the effect yet.
The TVET has been here for a while.
Has it?
Yeah, it has been for a while. At least President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration is going to 2.5 years right now. And we've been able to see quite a lot of program. Nelford has been on ground for a while.
Nobody has graduated for us to see
no, but
the
result. I've gotten like a graduate, this set that just left university,
yes.
A lot of them have testified to TET Fund, and so I beg your pardon, to NEL Fund, I beg your pardon. And the TVET also are talking about the vocational and technical education in the country, and also speaking about other reforms initiated by the government. But then if we look at it in general, how correct is it to say that these reforms are again tilting towards the urban community and making the other tiers of government, especially the local and rural community, irrelevant?
No, I don't think it's actually targeted at the urban. You know, it's just for the implementers of these reforms to take it down to where it should be. You know, and send people to check if this thing is getting to.
But when it's supposed to be on the exclusive on the concurrent list,
yes,
and right now. It is only on the exclusive. There tend not to be a correlation between the federal government. There's still a disconnect between the federal, the state, and the local government, which is supposed to be on the residual list. The local government, we've been able to carry out the research. And I can tell you for free that most local government don't even understand what the federal government is doing in terms of its reform policy. But then they are supposed to also be beneficiaries. When you look at all of this, again, I ask, are these reforms largely centered on the urban communities?
The urban. Well, we can't, you know, why we may be looking at it that way is because you and I are in the urban.
I'm a rural urban person. Because of my nature of my job.
I can't really tell how it has seeped down to the urban, to the rural, you know. But I think there should be a good synergy between the states and the federal. The TVET reform is, I am yet to see how it is implemented in all the institutions. And I think most of the reforms that the administration is churning out is targeted at the tertiary. That is the only thing I'm looking at. I think the only one that is might go down to the primary, the tertiary, the primary and the secondary is the digital, you know, where they want to bring in the smart boards.
As if they are DOTs, they are the DOT program by the president.
Yeah. So, but we need to see how this will work out, because there has to be power. One, you know, there has to be internet for all of this to work properly, and there has to be proper training of the existing teachers to carry it down. And we have to, like I said earlier at the beginning of this program, every reform, every policy has to be data driven. You know, we need to have the data of people that this reform should get to. Because if you don't know who is going to get this, how do we know how to implement it? And even the budget, you know, meant for it. We need to know all of this. You know, the one implemented by President Muhammadu Buhari was a disaster. You know, the feeding program. It was a hole dug in the purse of the nation's coffers, where certain individuals used to eat off the people, the nation's purse. Because what is feeding program? How many persons fed? And when you finish feeding them, to what end is that? You know, I heard people say in those days, it's going to attract students who at home want to go to school to learn because they want to go and eat. They're telling them to come and eat. It's very useless. Very useless.
Well,
so I hope they don't come up with something like that again.
But Chukwuemeka, let's even talk about the future of the Nigerian education, going by these reforms initiated by the federal government. Of course, a lot of states' policies and reforms are not very pronounced, but that of the federal government, at least we can attest to that. But looking at this, is there hope for the average Nigerian child going by these reforms? If these reforms eventually do not get or does not get to the rural communities?
There is no hope. Education to really be fruitful in the nation, there has to be proper reform, and if the reform does not include everybody, those in the rural and in the urban, is going to be useless. One, the nation, the people implementing the reforms have to be very, very truthful to the people. If there is any hidden agenda, because most times that's what we see whenever there's something that is coming up, they want to use it to either push out some fund, that is, I'm talking about the political class, or to use it for a different thing, or to use it for as a campaign thing. Like this administration from day one is about campaign. Every policy is about getting the people to vote for them. And it is not good, and the nation is watching. It's not about the people, it's about, so that when we do this, when it gets, we use it for campaign, and tell the people, you vote for us, because so that you keep taking this money, like this nail fund now. Before you know it, a campaign will come. They will start using it. Vote us so that you will keep getting the stipends. We'll keep supporting you in our destiny. Why not do a reform for the people's sake and take politics out of it? Until we have people that start taking politics out of anything they do for the people, the nation can never move forward, including the education sector. So the people implementing the reform have to be truthful. They have to be sincere in their reform. If there's lack of sincerity, the purpose will be defeated. So the nation is going to head in the right direction if we bring in sincerity, if we bring in trust in the people, because it is only someone you trust that you can invest in. Until we start trusting the people, we cannot invest in them. Until this administration starts trusting the people, and the first way of showing trust is bringing your people that you sent outside the nation to come back. Why the health sector is failing is because the politicians don't trust the health sector. That's why anyone you see, this person, he dies abroad, this one, he dies in UK, he dies in Saudi Arabia, he dies in social place. How many of them will die in Nigeria except they die by mistake, maybe by accident? But if they are sick and they still have the strength to fly, they fly them abroad. From the head to the least person in the political sphere, the people that implement all of these reforms, until they start trusting the system, until they start trusting the health sector, they can never, make it move forward. Until they trust the education sector, they can never build the education sector.
All right. As we begin to talk about, begin to wrap up at this point, a lot of politicians and governmental officials tend to be caught in this web of sending their children out of the country. You are a researcher. What will you recommend that we begin to do at this point in just a few seconds to address some of these pertinent concerns?
We have to come up with a policy that mandates every office holder, political office holder. You have to sign that your kids, if they're already abroad, you have to bring them home to study. That's one. We have to get the political office holders to do that. Bring your kids home. If we do that, then they will build the education sector, and they will not want to. If they lead by example, people, most people that are not into politics send their kids abroad because they watch the politicians do it.
And believe it or not, politicians are influencers. People tend to want to copy them because they are in the public eyes. By the time they lead by example and say, my kids are in social school, that's why I respect somebody like Erufai. Erufai kids were in schooling in Kaduna while the man was governor. You understand? So that's why I respect him to that end. If every governor, if every minister, if every president would mandate, if he has kids that are still in school, would mandate the kids to come home, look for schools within the nation and put even if it's a public, if it's a private institution, let them study there. But today we have a system where even somebody that sets up a university will send his own kids abroad and then allow open the university for other people to come and learn. You set up an institution, you want the school you set up to teach other people, but they can't teach your kids. That is the problem we have. Until we come up with a policy that mandates, it will be part of what otherwise don't take up this position. Don't even vie for this position. If you have your kids abroad, they are going to come, you have to sign it. You bring the kid. If you don't want your kids to come back abroad to Nigeria to study, then don't vie for this post. Or if they appoint you, reject the position. Until we do that, the nation can never move forward in this sector.
Well, I know a lot of politicians will be angry with you at this point in time, knowing fully well you want their kids to return back to Nigeria, even to study. Now you've given them a bitter pill to take right now. But I think that will go a long way in addressing some of the inadequacies and the disconnects that we have so far in the educational sector. But it's on this note I want to say thank you so much, Chukwuemeka Godswill, for finding out time to be with us here on Korero.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, viewer, this is how far we can go tonight on the show. Don't forget that you can join the conversation across all our various social media platforms currently showing on your screen. And you can also download the Rapid TV app from your Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcast. My name is Godwin Sunday. Always remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye for now.